Most entrepreneurs were kind of control freaks. I think entrepreneurs often hang on to mediocre ideas too long. They just get emotionally invested. My experience interacting so much with other entrepreneurs is it's small little experiments and keep adjusting to what works and drop what doesn't.
What's the advice for anyone who is an entrepreneur who's looking to scale? What would be the advice you'd give to them?
A couple pieces really important on my journey. And again, I stumbled into them, but
Are you looking for actionable insights from the world's most inspiring individuals? The Built by Love podcast is on a mission to transform your life, your business, and your health. Tune in for impactful conversations with people who do business differently. Avoid burnout, acquire freedom, and live life fully on your own terms. With me, Pete Daly-Dixon, alongside Daniel Bussius.
Mike, welcome to the Built by Love podcast. We are absolutely honored to have you here. For our listeners, can you give a quick introduction of who you are, where you come from, and don't give away too much because obviously we want to get into it and talk about your journey of success. But without further ado, can you make an introduction of who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Happy to be here. 51-year-old guy, engineer by training. Been married to Jane for 28 years. 3 children out of the house now. So an empty nester. I have officially started 8 companies. 5 of them fizzled. 2 of them we sold off for a bit of money, and had a last exit, meaningful exit, about 15 months ago. Or sold off the last company and financially independent now.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks.
And I think that's one of the things that's so many listeners and entrepreneurs are driving towards is, of course, financial independence, but many of them, as they start to get middle age and further on, they start looking about what do they want to do in their later years as their kids grow is, do I want to keep running this company that I built, or is there an exit, or what is a legacy that I can leave behind? And you've obviously had success with that. And I know our listeners are going to want to listen to that and hear about your journey and your success. But can we start all the way from the beginning? Can you start off with why you founded Spack Solutions and kind of how that grew? And I didn't even know you had started so many companies. So if you want to
Yeah.
elaborate on that too, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So it started back in 2001. My wife and I had a habit of just going to Barnes and Noble as a date night, and we'd wander around looking at books and kind of open up my world. I was working as an engineer at a consulting firm and opened up my mind to owning a business. I don't even remember what the basic business book I read was, but kind of talked about just, hey, tax savings you can write off your computer and little things like that. And that planted the seed. And then I was at an engineering conference and found out for people like me, we're traffic engineers designing roads and traffic signals. We needed to collect baseline data to then do our analyses with. So most people listening have driven over hoses on the road. They go clunk.
Mm-hmm.
That's collecting data on how many cars are going over that road. There were outsourced firms on the coasts doing that, but here in Minnesota, in the Midwest part of the country, it was all the engineers did it themselves. So I had this idea, hey, I could do this as a service for my buddies in the industry. Bought a couple of machines and talked to a couple of friends and started as a night and weekend business, just doing traffic counting. Still remember the first project I had that was worth more than $1,000. Kind of those things stick in your head, and just one step after another. Bought and renovated a house, flipped that, had some rental property, ended up getting into blogging, doing webinars and some coaching, layered on engineering consulting, then grew into a product business with video cameras and machine vision, scratching our own itch. And my journey for most of it was very much just scratching my own itch, going in different areas of interest. It was kind of the 20-year entrepreneurial journey. It was no grand vision like a Silicon Valley startup where here's this opportunity. Here's my giant business plan. I'm going out and raising money. It was all bootstrapped, me owning it by myself the whole way through, just one step in front of the next, almost the Forrest Gump style.
That's really interesting, Mike, because that was going to be my next question. That I imagine what you just said there could actually be quite encouraging and reassuring for entrepreneurs listening to this episode. That you don't need a huge all-encompassing vision with a clear execution strategy to get there. You can actually be where you are right now, solve the problems that are in front of you, and just trust that as you keep moving forward, the next will open up for you. But so what was it for you that at what point was it where you realized that you were onto something that could become something big?
Yeah, hey, I don't know that there was ever an epiphany moment. The things were kind of just gradual experiments, and it was when we got into the video camera technology and had enough client base to start getting our stuff manufactured in China instead of just cobbling it together in our own workshop. That was probably the biggest inflection point. But really, I want to go back to I think it's a myth that business schools and television are just. I think it's a few percent of the companies are really this big business plan, venture funding type thing. I'm involved in Entrepreneurs Organization, trade group with 15,000 entrepreneurs, and my experience interacting so much with other entrepreneurs is it's small little experiments and keep adjusting to what works and drop what doesn't. It's not this big grand slam swing. I feel like there's a skill progression of, hey, you don't jump to the NBA or the NFL just because you laid out a plan. You have to have a dream, but you start by throwing a ball around. I mean, yeah. Then maybe you start lifting weights. Then you go through your high school and maybe to college, but you don't jump from 0 to 100. And I'm using too many cliches, but yeah, this big notion. That isn't my experience.
It's interesting you say that. And my question to you is, at what point in time, because you said you started the business and you're doing nights and weekends, and it's more of a passion than it is. But there came obviously a point in time where you had to walk away from the security blanket of your 9 to 5 job and say, I'm going to go all in. And once someone has done that, they have the realization of, you don't know what's coming tomorrow. You don't know that every 2 weeks you're going to get that check you deposit into your bank account, so to speak. So what was that moment for you that said, okay, I'm going to go all in. This is no longer a night and weekend hobby. This is now going to be my profession and career?
It wasn't quite as glamorous as that, but my wife and I had a conversation, and this is our oldest child, who was just a year old, so pretty risky, and Jane was a stay-at-home mom, but we had built up about 4 months worth of cash in the bank to be able to cover the mortgage and living expenses, and I bought enough equipment and I had enough projects going that I'm like, I think there's something here. But more importantly, as an engineer, the economy was in good shape. I had a very good network, and I told her, I'm running this as an experiment. We're going to do this for 3 months, and if the money isn't there after 3 months, if we're not cash flowing this thing, then I will just go out and get a different job. And I was confident within a matter of weeks I could go land an engineering job to be able to pay the mortgage. So again, it seemed like jumping out of an airplane, but the way I set it up was really just stepping off a curb. There was a very intentional plan and measurements, and later learned from Annie Duke, the poker player who's written a bunch of books. It's kind of that setting that quitting criteria ahead of time is so important to not get dragged down.
Yeah.
I was lucky to intuitively do that.
Do you think, Mike, more businesses would be successful if they took more of that kind of engineering, logical approach to things?
I do. And I'm just thinking amongst my many friends who are entrepreneurs, and I think entrepreneurs often hang on to mediocre ideas too long. They just get emotionally invested and they don't make the adjustments. It doesn't have to be a complete 90-degree pivot, but they're just not living in the fact-based reality of, am I onto something or am I not onto something? And by setting milestones, criteria, it forces that reflection.
Absolutely. And so you built a traffic counting business, and for people, I remember when you and I met and you were explaining it to me, I was like, traffic counting. So those are the things in the road. Just for the people like me originally that were laymen and didn't understand, well, what are you doing with that? Like what data, as it says, okay, X amount of cars have driven over this road in this time frame. What do they do with that data? Like, what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, there's a couple levels of data. One is big national planning of where's the federal government down to the state level going to spend money improving roads, and probably hear a news report once a year of, hey, Atlanta's traffic is this bad or Dallas is this bad. And that is the federal government tied to all the planning efforts with using the gas taxes, their carrot and stick, force all the levels of government to collect how much traffic is going across specific roads. So that is all kind of master planned, and that's how we get big trend lines over decades. That's one level of kind of macro level traffic data we're looking at. Then micro level traffic data is we go out to an intersection and during rush hour counts from every direction going through the intersection, how many cars are turning left or going through or turning right, and how many pedestrians and bicycles are there. And it's a capacity calculation of a left turning car gobbles up more capacity that at that intersection than a right turning car does. So then we have algorithms that tell us, hey, how is this intersection operating? But more importantly, then, hey, do we need to add a left turn lane? Do we need to change signal timing? Do we need to add a roundabout? Or we're forecasting we're going to drop in a Walmart a quarter of a mile away that's going to add 100 left turning cars through the intersection. Is that going to just break things down and we need to make these improvements? So big macro stuff, the trends in the gas tax planning of, are we going to upgrade this county road to a 6-lane road, down to how are specific intersections going to operate, and should they have stop signs or roundabouts or traffic signals? And if it's traffic signals, how is that computer timing going to work to allocate the time between all the movements?
So what you're saying basically is cities like Los Angeles don't hire traffic engineers, right? Because it's just constant gridlock.
Or maybe our algorithms don't work as well as us traffic engineers would like to think.
I know that you've done so your business that you formerly owned and obviously you built has had done work from if Stan, correct me if I'm wrong, your business has done work with governmental organizations like countries, for military bases, right? You've worked with Walmarts going in, and what I'm very familiar with now, as a parent of a 5-year-old doing drop-offs every morning, is you've worked with private schools as well to manage the chaos and the safety of incoming cars, pedestrians, kids, crosswalks, and all that stuff. So you've worked at every level. I would imagine it would get more and more complex as you move up the chain of larger organizations. My question is, how did you grow into that? Like, what did that journey look like of selling into from a local traffic engineer that works with the city to, a military base or a Walmart?
Yeah, a big inflection point kind of in our credibility was I started a blog in about 2007. I was early on, and I had local clients, but I was kind of writing about the day to day of what I was doing as a traffic engineer and collecting data and doing my analysis. Turns out my clients, the Walmarts of the world, and the city engineers or county engineers didn't necessarily care about what I was doing, how I made the sausage. but all the other traffic engineers cared.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but continue to be held back by marketing that fails to bring in new customers? It's time to stop settling for lackluster results, wasting your time and money, and focus on a proven formula for business growth. At Built by Love, we're more than a marketing agency. We're your growth partner. As a multiple-time award-winning agency, we specialize in creating marketing strategies that aren't just effective, they're transformative. Here's what we do. 1. Grow your revenue. Our proven systems drive meaningful, measurable results. 2. Elevate your brand. Our strategies will help you stand out and connect with your audience on a deeper level. 3. We save you time and money. Our award-winning team will handle your advertising and marketing with precision and expertise so you can focus on what you do best. Don't just take our word for it. Experience the difference for yourself. Book your free consultation today at builtbylove.com.
About that. And so I was able to build up an international reputation, and I started writing white papers and how-to manuals, and led into building the video camera tools that the traffic engineers then could use to measure traffic. It really was the blogging was that tipping point of expanding us into the big time. The other big moment was partnering with a regional engineering firm that saw me as a specialist traffic engineer. They did a lot of work for Walmart, and Walmart, from a traffic engineering standpoint, is kind of a, hey, New York story. You made it there, you can make it anywhere. That going into a city meeting, a public hearing, usually Walmarts are very contentious. Lots of folks don't want Walmarts to go in just down the road for them, and traffic is always a scapegoat. So building up a reputation as a guy who could come in and help get the Walmart project through the process was kind of just, hey, if he can do that, he can work on any other kind of traffic project. So not that it's more technically complicated, but just the persona and the personality to be able to handle that contentious situation and calm it down, that built a reputation.
When you first started the blog, were you doing it with the intent that you wanted to build a reputation, or what was the creative burst to say, all right, I'm going to sit down and start to write a blog?
That I wish I had a bigger master planning thing to tell you, Daniel. But I'm much more of a tinkerer of just blogs were early, and I was reading a couple of early blogs and liked them, and there was nothing in our space. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to give myself a deadline of write something every week, and I'm going to do it for a couple of months and see what happens. Most of the things in my career as an entrepreneur were very much, hey, let's give this a try as a creative outlet and see if it goes anywhere. Not I'm going to take over the world. Big intention.
It's interesting you use the word creative there, because up to now we've been very left brain, engineering, projects, all the things. But you just use that word creative outlet. Where else in your life have you kind of had a desire to express your creativity? How's that shown itself?
That probably cooking. I do like cooking. Also, as a kid, I drew a lot, but I'm not that artistic. So the creativity has come out in my business endeavors and blogging and writing white papers and those kinds of things. I've written several self-published books, and not enough to want to seriously be an author, but that's where the creativity has come out.
Yeah. And in that expression of creativity, I mean, this is the Built by Love podcast, and I know that you are a client of Daniel's, of Built by Love. Was there something in that name, Built by Love, that kind of attracted to you? And where do you see that more creative, human, emotional stuff in building a business?
I definitely clicked with Daniel as I was going down the journey of finding a marketing company to help assist me to pull together everything we're doing and polish it up, and really liked Daniel's framework. Um, he certainly has the creative side to it, but he also has that process oriented, almost engineering, like this, then this, then this, then this. And I really resonated with that.
I got to experience, Mike, how you ran your organization, which was impeccable and incredible. Um, you followed Traction. For anyone who's listening who doesn't understand what Traction is, it's an organizational book, and I'll allow you to talk a little bit about that. But you had incredible employees and staff that really stepped into their roles. That you could tell they were really committed to excellence. You had just an incredible organization all across, and a marketing agency that has a chance to work with a client, you really start to, go behind the curtain and see all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there really was no bad and ugly there. It was all a lot of incredible things. My question is this: is at one point in time, as you were building the organization, did you determine that you needed to step away more and more and give your team members more responsibility? And I experienced that as you had done that too. So, and how did that impact you? Sorry, that's a two-part question, but at what point in time did you say, I have to start, releasing some of the responsibilities as the CEO and owner? And then how did that impact your personal life? What did you do with that? Did you reinvest that into business, or what did you do?
Yeah, there are a couple of levels to that. Kind of the first run through, Daniel, was maybe 10-ish years ago, as we were starting to grow and build products and get things made overseas and online store. I quickly learned I was getting outside of my area of expertise, and also selling time as a consultant. I only had so much time. So these external pressures forced me to build up a team, and we got up to 16 people and did apply the Traction process through that. And I very much had a wonderful team, and Bryant, kind of my number two, really ran that process well. Kind of the after story you don't know as much about is the pandemic crushed us. It solved congestion, and our revenue dropped 75% in a month.
Oh my gosh.
So that, yeah, and my monthly burn rate was about 250 grand. My monthly expenses with payroll and rent and everything. So, I mean, just like, oh no, what's happening here? Through that process, I'd like to think I kept a pretty level head, but ended up selling off the consulting and the data collection branches and doing layoffs, and realized the video camera technology was the core moneymaker. For better, for worse, it wasn't my core passion. The engineering work was more my core passion, but just of, hey, I need to make sure my kids can go to college.
Right.
Let's shrink down and focus. So we went from a staff of 16 all the way down to a staff of, there were 3 of us left at the end of it.
Wow.
But we had built the marketing automation, the fulfillment center, the procurement up using third-party software and companies, to the point where we were able to scale up to 7 figures in EBITDA with just 3 of us.
Wow.
So we were very profitable. And through all the pandemic, we kind of pivoted the EOS Traction model and built it on top of using Basecamp software, which for small companies, I can't speak highly enough. It kind of combines a Slack messaging center with a Trello kind of to-do list, but it allowed us to work asynchronously. And we could always see, hey, here's all the things everybody has going on, and we can see them as they're getting checked off, and are they getting done on time, or are they overdue? So we could run our weekly level 10 staff meetings very efficiently using the software as a day-to-day communication tool, but then run the EOS process on top of it.
I remember COVID, we lost 60% of our revenue within 60 days of COVID, if you're a karate studio, if you're a chain of karate studios and you have no students, you don't need marketing, you don't need advertising. So we just saw clients just dropping off left and right. One of the things that helped us survive was having enough of a runway. So it sounds like you had already pre-planned. You had already made sure you had enough of a runway to handle that. Is that accurate?
Well, I had cash sitting in my personal investments that I liquidated at the bottom of the market, but I still don't regret that. It was so I had months of runway of cash, but kind of like the setting the quitting time we talked about earlier of looking 3 months of this, I needed to address where we were headed. I wasn't just going to ignore the current facts and let a couple months worth of cash disappear. So I was really aggressive on just making sure the core survived.
It's really interesting. I mean, obviously you're an engineer because you're looking at the logical, not the emotional. And you already kind of talked about that earlier in the podcast. Um, Most people say, find something you're passionate about and, and so forth. And you're saying, hey, when things got tough and you started looking at finances, you weren't really passionate about video, but obviously Pareto principle, that's where the cash was. That's where your profit margin was. And so that must have been a huge endeavor for you to say, I'm going to remove all the other aspects of the business, sell them off, which we should talk about in a moment, how you went through that experience. But what was that like for you in that moment of you've built this company, you've had success, there's an outlying pandemic that you can't control. We don't know when it's going to end. There's uncertainty there. And then you're getting into hardware and software that you don't really have a passion about, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
It's trying to figure out why was I a business owner? And I think over 20 years of being on the entrepreneurial journey, my identity had shifted from being an engineer to being a business owner. So there wasn't a disconnect on my identity. I know that's a lot harder for folks. So I kind of got in. My whole career has been first and foremost, I'm taking care of my family. So I'm doing this so I have the freedom of time to be the father I want to be, and also to make the income my family needs so we can live the life we want. So that was ahead of the whole passion thing. Now, we did have a passion component in that fatal car crashes are the leading cause of death for kids, and our work directly impacted that. So we rightly said we are saving lives, and we were tracking what we felt our impact was. But kind of when push comes to shove, first and foremost was taking care of my family, and I needed to put that ahead of any personal passion. Was the decision I made. Now, it actually was a horribly gut-wrenching process letting most of my team go. I had weeks of almost no sleep and getting up in the middle of the night and brainstorming and just dumping my thoughts. I was a wreck and I lost weight and all of that. It was very stressful. I don't want to diminish that there wasn't emotion involved in these decisions, but I did have the clarity of kind of my pyramid of what's most important to me down to what's least important. And personal passion was not the driving focus.
You just touched on health there, Mike, and it was going to be one of my next questions. For anyone listening to this, they obviously can't see you, but you obviously look like you keep yourself in good shape. You just touched on the fact there that that period of letting people go was, emotionally difficult for you, and you lost weight. How would you describe your own personal health and well-being in your journey as an entrepreneur? Have you always looked after yourself, as you evidently do?
Yeah, I've for more than a decade seen my personal health as part of my job and part of my working hours. So working out, getting to the gym, getting out jogging, even going to the sauna, meditating, getting enough sleep, all of the important health metrics I saw as a very important part of my job as the leader of the business, that I was working on every possible way to make my brain.
You're an entrepreneur and you're busy, but we know that every business owner needs a podcast without the hassle of learning about production. Well, we figured it out for you. Activate Your Podcast is a service that offers everything you need to make a podcast that creates meaningful relationships with your clients at scale. The experts at AYP will work directly with you to produce 5-pillar episodes from a 2-hour conversation that captures the trust and love you are bringing to your ideal client. And the assets are all yours to create your own amazing marketing campaign. For the benefits of a podcast without the hard work, head to activateyourpodcast.com and let's create something great together. Now, back to the episode.
Work the right way so I could be the level-headed leader the company needed. And that did pay off when I was making these hard decisions. It was days, not months or years of being in this grind. And I was meditating and trying to sleep and trying not to drink too much and all of those things, and still getting to the gym. But no, I have strong feelings that kind of that mind-body connection. And if your body isn't right, your mind isn't working as well as it can.
As Ralph Waldo Emerson is quoted as saying that health is the first wealth. And it seems that you intuited that as well. And there's a really important insight in what you've just said there, which I want to make sure the listeners picked up on, is that you regarded your health as part of your job. It wasn't, you didn't have your CEO role and you kind of tried to fit in the health stuff around the outside. It's like you saw it intrinsically as part of your responsibility in the leadership of the company. And that's a framing and a positioning, which I just think I just wanted to emphasize for the listener.
Yeah, and if I can add something, because I mean, obviously everybody that's on the call is an entrepreneur, and so many times as an entrepreneur, and I experienced this as personally, and so many close people I know that are successful business owners, I've witnessed the same thing. Is you set your goals, you set the KPIs, the rocks, the milestones, whatever you call it in your own organization, and you get hyper focused. We're so close. We got to do this. We just got to work a little bit more. And this is coming to a question, but I remember the epiphany for me as I was cycling with a group of business owners in the Entrepreneurs organization on a Saturday morning. And I was riding with this one guy who I'd consider a mentor. And he said to me, he goes, "What is working till 10 o'clock at night going to do for you?" And I was like, "Oh, I get more and more, send a couple more emails." And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "So you got yourself wound up. You're working late. You're not present with your family. And what's the damage that's doing? You keep checking off boxes like, I just did more things. Did you actually move the needle?" And it made me think about it. I was like, no, actually I didn't. I get caught so much in that end result that I just decided I needed to do more things. And I forewent my health, forewent my relationships, missed out on certain experiences that I was working on Saturdays and working on things like that. So many entrepreneurs arguably will get hyper focused into one area and then completely eliminate or forget about those other areas. How did you find that balance as you were moving through, especially a father? You had 3 children. When you started the company, you had a 1-year-old. I mean, how did you move through those demands and keep that balance?
It obviously was hard. I mean, our time and attention is always being tugged from external forces. I think a couple of key things along the journey was, one, when I was coming out of college, it was very in vogue. There was a guy named Chainsaw Al Dunlop who would come in and just take over a company and let go half the workforce. And my father-in-law was laid off a couple of times early in my career. And I kind of thought about, hey, do I want to be in the corporate environment and try to climb the ladder, whether in a consulting firm or go get an MBA and do that? And I shied away from that. I didn't want to, like most entrepreneurs were kind of control freaks, and I didn't want to just give up, hey, somebody else has my destiny. I'm just going to try and hope they give me a free pass up to the top of the ladder. And knowing how much work that took. So I early on made the decision, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want that freedom and work on my independence, my own. But then my wife is phenomenal. And through the journey, I of course had the long weekends and working through like, hey, shoot, we got more work and I need to be there at 9 o'clock at night. But I always tried to treat those as learning experiences of, at this moment, we made a commitment and I need to deliver on that. But that is actually a fail, that we didn't plan our work properly as engineers to kind of constrain the work into whatever we made the commitment to ourselves, our team members, our clients. So over time, we went through the whole values journey, and that took forever, and values, principles, but we ended up, I'm very proud of where we ended up with what we call the code of conduct. So hopefully crystal clear, didn't bring anybody's outside personal, religious background, whatever into it. But our code of conduct was, we keep commitments, we act respectfully, we improve. And we all memorized those 8 words because they're simple enough, but they're ranked in order, where sometimes we would have clients pushing on us to do things that we did not commit to. And then we would so the first question was, what is the actual commitment of the situation? Then next, are we acting respectfully? We can't control how other people act, but we can control how we act, and then we can make a decision. And then lastly, we need a debrief and we figure out how to do better next time. So this self-improvement loop on it, that was really key to me passing off to my team when we were at 16, that thinking process of, here's how we behave. We can have whatever personal baggage we're bringing into the office, but this is how to be a member of the Spack team. This is who we are, and this is our thought process. So I didn't have to be there. And I think that set the right tone, that my team, my guys and ladies, worked heroically at moments. But then when we worked heroically, we took a pause and said, why was heroic effort needed? So that was part of our continual process.
That's a great example and inspiration that you've given there as well, Mike, because you only need to have gone around the block a few times in business to have had your fill of value statements and mission statements and principles. But I've only heard yours once, and I've got it. You keep your commitments, you act respectfully, and you always improve. And therein, I think, is an example for our listener that you got to keep it simple, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you obviously, that is a value or a philosophy that you have. Where else in your business did that sort of getting to the essence, the simplicity of things? Did you see that anywhere else in your business as you grew it?
I like to think that we had that permeate through, and Daniel's work helped us on that because we're a hot mess. But coming up with, who's our ideal client? Why are we in business? Recognizing we want to be profitable, getting it, why are we here, down to a sentence or two. How do we do that? What is our plan for the year? A handful of bullet points that are measurable. Trying to keep it simple, but also trying to build a locker room mentality of, at our level 10 meetings, we had a traveling trophy that corresponded to each of those codes of conduct. So like for the respectful, we had Aretha Franklin respect CD, and everybody would go around and kind of give shout outs of, hey, where did each of these code of conduct values pop up? Who exhibited them? And one person one week would have the traveling trophy. And then at the end of that little 5-minute session, they would hand the trophy to the other teammate who they thought best embodied that core value that week. So it was a traveling trophy, and it was never me at a top down reinforcing the behavior. It was always the teammates back and forth with each other of what did they recognize, and them making the decision and passing the ownership around.
Mm.
So I was always looking for simple ways to reinforce what we were doing.
You've mentioned, sorry, Daniel, you had a string of questions earlier, so I'm going to go on another one here. So you mentioned entrepreneurial organization, traction. You said that you worked with Daniel. So at some point in your growth of the company, you got outside advice. You paid for help from outside. Was that true right from the very beginning? What was your journey like in terms of getting that outside help? And then
The
would you do it?
outside,
Would you do it differently if you did it again? Sorry.
okay, two different parts. First, on the journey of looking outside, I was so blessed. My first boss and mentor, Sheldon, um, he was a member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers on day one of the beginning of my career, forced me to go to my professional society engineering meetings. And I built up a big network and became president of my 3-state region chapter and all of those things. So from day one, I had looked outside of me and my company to learn from outside experts. So that permeated my thought process. And then it was as we were cash flowing, I would invest more and more. I'm a business book junkie. I thought about getting an MBA, but when I looked into it, I saw, hey, they're reading a lot of books I can just buy at Barnes and Noble. I started a book club with a bunch of buddies, and we'd read a book a month, and we did that for 5 years and talk about it. And so trying to build those networks, eventually I stumbled on EO, and that opened, each of these steps kind of opens my mind and my perspective on, hey, I grew up in a tough neighborhood in Minneapolis, and my worldview was pretty tiny, but by reading books and meeting people outside of my zones of comfort, I'm learning there's a bigger, broader world out there. So I, over time, always saw it as investing in me and was looking for outside help. And not every outside consultant is a home run, but I did have a good batting average, and figuring out who can help you is a way I really, towards the end of my entrepreneurial journey, was looking at what Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coaches calls who, not how, of starting out as an entrepreneur. At least I was so delusional, I thought I could be an expert at everything. Like, I should be our bookkeeper. I should be our accountant. I should be our marketing person. I should be our product development person. Of course, I can read 2 business books and I can come up with this. But eventually get humbled enough to realize there are experts out there, and you can go much faster and cheaper outsourcing. And that really how I was able to have 7 figures in profit with only 2 people on my payroll at the end of the journey, by leveraging outside help.
How would you describe your unique ability? You mentioned Dan Sullivan there. Were you in Strategic Coach?
Yes. Yep.
So how would you describe your unique ability?
It comes down to one, I question convention. I'm a pretty skeptical guy, and I push and prod for that Pareto principle 80-20 of what will get me that first cut of improvement, kind of that 80% benefit. And then I'm good at pushing for the results. So being disciplined myself and figuring out how to get my team there, even if they're not disciplined. So kind of 3 steps on my unique ability.
Amazing.
I want to step back to the COVID part just for a moment, because so many entrepreneurs envision either exiting, they think about a multiplier, right? They think about those things down the road. Very few are able to actually execute on that. There's so many moving parts to getting ready to exit. Obviously, for you, an outlying pandemic started to push you in that direction. But ultimately, it sounds like, unless I'm mistaken, you exited even the video portion. So as you sold off a few things, then you scaled the next thing, the video part, and then you exited that. At what point in time did you say, for the video part, the last exit, I'm gonna scale this to this part or this revenue, and then I'm gonna exit. If you could talk about that, of what was that planning like? Was it a 2-year road, a 6-month road? And then where in the world do you go to do something like that? Do you hire somebody? Do you do it on your own? There's a lot of misconceptions, I believe, that are out there when it comes to that. So few people have done it successfully that a lot of people, unless you're a Mike Spack of the world, you just don't know.
Hey there, entrepreneurs and business owners. Are you feeling stuck with marketing strategies that just aren't delivering? Struggling to attract the right customers or boost your sales? Imagine turning those challenges into triumphs with a proven roadmap tailored just for you. Introducing Marketing Built by Love, the game-changing book by award-winning expert Daniel Bussius. Marketing Built by Love is designed to tackle your biggest business pains head-on, whether you're battling low visibility, weak customer loyalty, or stagnant growth. This book provides actionable solutions that drive real results. Here's how it can transform your business. Boost your revenue. Implement strategies that convert leads into loyal customers. Strengthen customer relationships. Create meaningful connections that keep your clients coming back. Streamline your marketing efforts. Save time and money with effective, easy-to-follow systems. Don't let marketing woes hold you back any longer. Take control and watch your business thrive. Grab your copy of Marketing Built by Love today in stores at Barnes & Noble, or order online at Amazon or wherever you buy quality books. Transform your marketing. Solve your business problems. Achieve the success you deserve with Marketing Built by Love. Available now.
Well, I feel like Forrest Gump stumbling through this. So coming out of the pandemic, I kind of hit that product market fit right. We're a rocket ship. We're doing 7 figures in profit. And I was thinking, okay, me and my team kind of have one more iteration of our products in mind for R&D, but we're not sure what to do after. So I start thinking about, should I be into acquisition mode? Whether should it be something under our umbrella? Should I start something new? Should I acquire a totally different business? Start studying up on all of that, and going through the process of studying how businesses are bought and sold kind of inverted the question of, how much money would I need, and what would I buy my business for what I think it's worth? And stumbled into Quiet Light Brokerage, which is an online brokerage primarily of e-commerce sites. And at the time, we were an e-commerce store. I didn't have any active sales staff outbound. We were taking all of our orders by credit card through an online store. So I could position us as an online store. Usually businesses you're bought based on your cash flow of
Right.
your EBITDA, a proxy for profit cash flow times a multiple. And then that's the purchase price. With figuring out that EBITDA, usually savvy buyers are wanting to look at a track record of, hey, I'm going to average out how much profit you had over the last 3 years or 5 years. How stable are you? Well, e-commerce businesses are only bought and sold on the last 12 months because things are ebb and flow so much. So if you took a 3-year average of our profit, it was horrible. If I could sell you the last 12 months of my profit, all of a sudden we're talking $1.5 million. I went through, and one of the many people I found was a guy named Ryan Tantum, and he had a good framework for thinking about how to sell your business to a strategic buyer, an internal buyer, create an ESOP, all 5 or 6 ways you could sell your business. And then what are all the key things that come with those different buyer types? Like, you'll get a higher price with a private equity firm, but much more of that will be an earn out on how well they did selling you 5 years later. So going through Ryan's materials, it helped me figure out I could go to Quiet Light. Part of their genius is they charge pretty high fees, but nothing up front. If you go to a more of an M&A professional, they'll charge you $100,000 up front to make sure you're serious, because they have too many guys who get emotional and back out of the deal. So they want a commitment device up front. Quiet Lake did not require that. So it was kind of a flyer. I'm like, well, if they don't get me the deal I want, I don't have to do it and I'm not owed anything.
Right.
And they were great at pulling together all the materials. I have an outsourced CFO bookkeeping, so all of our stuff was clean. We used HubSpot and Shopify and into QuickBooks. So we had a machine that was very automated and built. So at the end of the day, I didn't have to pull all of this material. I just gave read-only access to the potential acquirers and said, you poke around and look at our data. I'm not going to pull specific reports for you. You pull whatever reports you want.
Nice.
So going through that whole process, figured out now my multiple was pretty low. It was close to 3.0, but I got 95% cash at closing with a 5% seller note, no earnouts. And I had a couple of week transition and then I was done. So basically just handed the keys to the car to the new owner and I'm out of here and you owe me 5% of this 5 years later, which he has that since actually paid off. So I got 100% of my money without any risk and without having to think about it. And it was going through the checklist Ryan put together, which is the only place I've ever seen anything like that, of thinking through what's important to me. Do I want to keep my team together? Do I care if anybody gets laid off? Do I care how they are treated? Do I want to still work there? Do I not want to? And also, John Warlow's built to sell stuff and podcast. He has lots of horror stories on people who've done it wrong. So just all of this framed up, I got clear on what my perfect deal was. And I put myself in a take it or leave it situation that if I didn't get what I wanted, I just keep running the place. And miraculously found Parker, who bought the company and he's doing well with it, but found kind of that one buyer who would give me exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
How long did that process take? But by the time that you said, okay, we're gonna go out, we're gonna get shopped, right? So how long for you working with Quiet Lake did it take to then basically closing?
7 months.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is incredible. Daniel, we need to make sure we put the resources and books and people that Mike mentioned there in the show notes. Just conscious of the time, Mike, as we're kind of drawing to the end of our hour together. And it's quite nice that we've got to the point where we started, which is your exit. So what are you doing now? You're financially independent. You got a stack of time on your hands. How do you fill your days?
Yeah, that has actually been a tougher part of the journey. That floundering isn't the right word, but I'm 51 now and reinventing myself. And it took 9 months to kind of slowly dissolve the ego from being the high-powered entrepreneur guy in charge. I've knocked around. I did a 6-month certificate program through Rutgers University. I thought maybe I'd want to be an executive coach. Quickly realized I don't want to turn my calendar over to other people who are going to book all kinds of time and then cancel on me. So that was a failed experiment. My son and I dabbled with a new product, but the designers took too long and he's off to college and being a college student. And it was one of these ideas that would make tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm like, I'm not taking tech support calls for tens of thousands of dollars. So that idea is just sitting there and he's off enjoying his best life as a college freshman. Right now, I'm actually getting an accounting finance degree through Southern New Hampshire University. I'm going to be able to do that in about 9 months, which is pretty remarkable. I kind of thought through one thing we didn't touch on, but a big pivot for me was becoming more savvy on the financial side. Almost all entrepreneurs, there are very few CPA accountants who become entrepreneurs. It's either you're a great salesperson or you're the great technical person, and very few of us have financial acumen. I did build that up over time, but kind of my perfect job now, it doesn't exist, but I joke with my wife, if I could work for an inner city high school, and if it was a charter school or a Catholic school, kind of be their CFO, do some part-time fundraising, teach a class a semester on entrepreneurship, finance, economics, that kind of stuff. Be a monitor in the weight room after school and start a pickleball club. That would be my perfect 45 hours a week.
Well, you've set the intention now, man. You've put it out there. So can we loop back to you in a year's time and see how you're getting on with that?
We can loop back, but the next year is committed. My wife is a super volunteer, and she puts on a big gala. And that's in October. And after that, we have a pretty crazy travel schedule for the next 12 months. So enjoying our time being together and being empty nesters.
I've got a left field question for you, if it's all right, just as we to conclude the wrapping up bit. Is so I've been on your website. Obviously, we do research on our guests, and I'm really curious to know, because we have an interest in board games too, what your current favorite board game is.
And it's not even a board game, and it's largely because of my wife. We're playing a card game called Sky Joe.
Okay.
And it is suitable to play with little kids, but it is enough thinking, enough luck. You can play with 2 to 8 people, and the games take a half hour, and it's a very fun social game that it's not too intense.
Sky Joe.
Skyjo, SKYJOE, I think.
Great.
Buy it on Amazon.
Great tip.
That's our latest game.
I'll have to look at that. Right now in our household, we graduated from Candyland, and we're moving to Chutes and Ladders.
Oh no! I was gonna say, don't do Chutes and Ladders. That is the most frustrating game in the world. The never-ending game.
Yeah. I've already experienced that, and my son's 5.5 actually. And so he's starting to take hockey. And so that's the frustration point that I'm starting to have, right? Is keep your stick down. No, you can't wave the stick up here. So, yeah. So I don't know. Chutes and Ladders or hockey will be the death of me. We'll see. Mike, if I could ask, because obviously, but first, before I ask this question, I think what you're looking to do in your next chapter of life is amazing and is incredible. And if I may add a suggestion, consider creating an accelerator for students who want to be entrepreneurs. Obviously, you've gone through that process successfully. You've got the acumen for that to guide them through that. And if you did that and then incorporated the weight, the gym monitor afterwards and everything else, I think that would be incredible, because there's arguably no better education in life than trying to come up with an idea, get the courage to do it, and then learn all of the different things of being a business owner that most people don't recognize. I have to have good sales skills, marketing skills, management skills, financial skills, like all the different things, So
and I appreciate that, and that's definitely top of mind for me. And I was working on that over the summer with my son of what the heck would I do with him, and then the thought there, and it starts with get somebody to give you $1 for something. And whether you're selling something on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, or you're asking somebody if you can mow their lawn, or you're selling a glass of lemonade to somebody, just what is that very tiny thing to get the kids started and acting, not build this great big business plan with all of these different components. It's just figure out something. Somebody will trade $1 for something, time, service, thing, whatever. Because there's a lot of ways to be an entrepreneur, and we make it sound like this big, difficult thing, but really it's just those small transactions to get kids to start.
As we're wrapping up, what's the advice for anyone who is an entrepreneur who's looking to scale? What would be the advice you'd give to them?
A couple pieces really important on my journey, and again, I stumbled into them, but the notion of get that product market fit and then ride it. Of part of my problem, and so many entrepreneurs I see, if there isn't a fire, they will create one because they like to be the firefighter. And sometimes just figuring out, okay, here's my ideal client, here's what we do for them, and then scaling up that and just being content that that is the thing you're doing, pairing that with financial discipline of understanding how cash flow statements work, making your forecasts. So many of my friends are treating their company like a checkbook, and I did for a long time, instead of saying, well, you look at it and I have excess cash, I'm going to take it out and buy a cabin. Well, maybe that excess cash should be hiring a strategic person, hiring a consultant, hiring Built by Love, a thesis of, no, I'm reinvesting this money for a specific purpose, and then tracking, did that work or not, and using those experiments. That's what separates the small time from the medium operators in business to scale up, is the financial acumen.
Have you ever read that book? It's from an individual, an entrepreneur's organization, Big Numbers, Simple Profits.
Yeah. Yep. I like that one. I also like Keith Cunningham's work. He wrote The Road Less Stupid, and his advice helped me through the pandemic of keep the main thing and focus on the dollars. So make sure these are all investments that are paying off.
Where can people find you if they want to reach out, if they want to follow you? Are you on Twitter? Are you anywhere? Where can they find you?
No, connect to me on LinkedIn, just Mike Spack, SPACK, and we'll connect there. And occasionally I post stuff on LinkedIn, but not trying to take over the world, but happy to chat with folks if I can be useful and helpful.
Well, I'd argue you're going to transform the world, because the work that you and your wife are going to do for helping kids to focus on health, get in the weight room, focus on that, discipline, build a business, you're going to transform the world. And those individuals are going to go out there and make a positive impact. So it is a ripple effect. And so thank you for that. Mike, any final words as we wrap up and say our thank yous?
I'm very happy this hour went quick, and I think we had a good conversation. Hopefully there's a nugget or two somebody took away of like, hey, I haven't thought of it that way. That's how I grew as an entrepreneur, just hanging out with other entrepreneurs and listening how they did it, not taking their advice or here's the only way to do it, but learning there's lots of ways to do it.
I would argue there's probably 100 gems in there. So my team will have a hard time picking them all out for the sound bites, but we'll do our justice. So
thank you so much, Mike, for your time and your wisdom and your insights and your sharing out your life journey with us the little bit that we were able to capture in an hour anyway. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Built by Love podcast. If you found the conversation inspiring or helpful in any way, then head to builtbylove.com/podcast and make sure you're subscribed to our email list. Please also take a few minutes to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend that you think it might help. Each review helps us to spread the message of love to more people. See you next time on the Built by Love podcast.